Hello, and welcome back to my video series on how to use Google SketchUp. In today's lesson, we will 3D model the letter A. We will use many of the tools that we used from lessons 2 through 6. We will also learn how to use the Protractor Tool, the Circle Tool, and the tape measure.
Okay, everyone, so next thing that we want to do in our lesson is start working with different shapes so that it's no longer perfectly rectangular. So a good letter to work with is the letter A, and we'll go ahead and kind of just start off by working with that. So if we have the same project open as before, we'll just continue working there. If not, you guys can go ahead and just open up and create a new object and kind of do the same setup as we did before when we were starting off working with the letter E. To make things simple for us right now, we'll go ahead and just click this right here, and we'll click the overhead view projection so that, again, we're working in just one kind of surface or one plane. And what I'll also do for right now is move this letter kind of out of the way. So again, I'll just select one of the points and just kind of just arbitrarily or just randomly put it over there. So it's a little bit easier for us to work with. And then I'll select the line tool, and then I will, let's go ahead and zoom in so we have a good place to work with. So I'll go ahead and just kind of arbitrarily put a point here, and again, you can see that the line is red, so we're parallel to the red axis. We'll type in the number 20 right here and hit enter. So this will kind of be like the basis of the letter right here, so we're going to try to replicate this letter A right here. So it has this little flat edge at the bottom, so that's kind of where we're starting off with. So next we'll go ahead and draw a line up over here, and let's make it a value of, let's say, 50 right here. So that's the inner part of the letter A. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll draw a little line over here and make that also 20 millimeters. And then we'll also make this, we'll kind of come down here, and we'll place a point right here. So if we look very closely, I just hit escape so that we can look at this a little bit carefully. We can see that this line and this line right here, they don't look really the same. And that's because we kind of just arbitrarily put these points right here. So what we can do is instead, let's kind of set this up so that we can make this more accurate and make things similar on both sides of the leg of the letter A. So I'm going to hit undo right here. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually just draw a line, and I'm just going to make it doesn't matter the length right here. And then hit escape. This line kind of just works as kind of like a scaffold, or basically like a temporary little marker that we can kind of adjust things to. Next thing over here, we're going to go to this tape measure tool, and then we're going to get the one that says protractor over here, this bottom one right here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to set it up over here at this corner right here, and we're just trying to basically get the angle that this letter or this line basically has. So we're going to select that endpoint right here, and then we're going to point it down towards the so it's parallel to the green axis but points down to the red axis. And then what we're going to do is just kind of swing it out over here, and then if you look very carefully in the bottom right hand corner, you can see it's at an angle of 13.7 degrees, and then we can just kind of snap that over there. So this angle, the one going like this angle right here, is at 13.7 degrees. So what I can do now is go back to the protractor tool, select that corner right there, which is starting the other leg of the letter A. You can select it, and again, we point it down towards the red axis and parallel to the green axis. We can select that right there. And then what we can do is now we can type in any angle that we want, and it'll create a set of dashed lines that will basically act as a guide for us to put our line on. So the last angle was 13.7, so we can make this 13.7, and then it will kind of set it up in the right way. It's key to note here that before, if we looked at the angle that it was before, it was technically minus 13.7, meaning that it was shifted towards the left, and when we put it over here, we just typed in 13.7. That means it's a positive angle, so it was sweeping counterclockwise, so moving from left to right. Just kind of be careful of that. If you type in the number and it makes it perfectly parallel, so kind of like an intersect like this, just change it, make it either positive or negative, and it'll kind of fix things like that. So I'm going to hit escape now, and I should be able to move around freely. And I'll go ahead and go back to the line tool. And what we'll do now is kind of just go over that line, that dashed line. And basically it will be the same angle on the left and the right hand side. And then what I'll do is go here, and just kind of like what we did before in one of the earlier lessons, I'm just going to drag it along with this black line right here and type in the number 20 and hit enter. And now this length right here is the same length as over here. And then you can hit the letter, you can hit escape. So now let's kind of erase a couple things to make things a little bit easier to look around. So we can go to the eraser tool, and then we can just start erasing certain things. So I can go over here, highlight this, it deletes it, and you can kind of see a little bit more carefully that this line over here is the same length as this line over here. And then I'm also going to delete this over here. So by deleting it, we can see that it basically no longer makes this a closed shape, and it removes that gray outline that we were seeing before. So what we're going to do now is go back to the same tool, the Protractor Tool. And you can see in this letter A that both the inner line of the A and the outer part of the A, they're basically parallel. So we know that if we put the protractor right here, any lines that we make for the letter A should also be parallel as well. And we know that angle is 13.7 with respect to the red axis. So we can set it up in the same way. Just place it down and click it. And then what we can do is point it up towards the green axis. And then we can kind of see as we move it in a counterclockwise motion that it basically creates an angle for us. So we want 13.7. So we can type that in and hit enter. And you can see it makes another set of guide marks right there for us to put the letter on. So then we can repeat the same process for the other side. We select the endpoint right here. We define the axis that we want to kind of take reference to, so we can do it as the green axis, and then we can just kind of move the angle to any value that we want. In our case, we want 13.7, and then we want to move it 13.7, and we hit enter. And you can see it also makes it parallel to that inner leg of the letter A. So now we hit go back to our line tool, and now we can kind of just move this up to basically make the letter A. So we can go up to here. So if this line is 50, let's go ahead and make this 75, let's say. Actually no, so I just undid, I hit Control and Z. We'll have to make this 90. Oops, sorry, we'll undo again. So the key thing is to make sure you actually go along that dashed line and making sure it's basically on top of that line right there. We'll go ahead and make the value 100. Then we'll hit escape and do the same thing over here. Go ahead and go along that dashed line right there and type in the value of 100. Hit enter. And then we'll kind of just go across and make that. So we can already see that it's starting to make the letter for us. What we want to do now is basically do the same thing inside of here to make the little cutout of the letter A. So we'll click over here. We'll go up, let's say, a value of 20 and hit enter. We'll go over and hit that right there. And then we'll go down, and then it'll create that inner shape for us. And then we'll repeat the process going along these dashed lines right here to the intersection. And then hit escape. So now what we can do is we can go back to the eraser tool, go to the center, and well, we'll hit the selection tool. We'll select that surface, hit the eraser tool, and then erase it. Or just hit delete and it'll get rid of it. So we kind of got a little bit of a letter A right here. So the last thing that we can do is go back to the eraser tool and just kind of erase some of these guide marks that we had set up before. So those lines that we created with the protractor you can delete to make things a little bit more cleaner. So the last thing that we want to do is change our perspective to the one over here. so that we get a 3D perspective. And then what we can do is use the push-pull tool to basically make the 2D surface into a 3D object. So we just select the surface, pull up, and then we can type in a number. So let's say we want to make the same thickness as the letter E right here. We can type in the value of 20. And we can hit enter, and then we get a 3D object. So another thing that we can do is we can go ahead and also make round objects inside of here. So I'm going to select the pan tool, and I'm going to move over right here. And then what we're going to do is go to this tool over on the left hand side that says rectangle. Instead of choosing rectangle, what I'm going to use is the one that says circle right here. And I'm also going to use the top view again to make things a little bit easier. So what you can do is basically you select a point arbitrarily or on a specific point, and then what you can do is kind of move your mouse in and out, and it will change the size of the circle for you. If you want a specific size, it's important to remember that if you want a size with a certain diameter, that the SketchUp program actually only uses radius. It uses radius instead of diameter. So if you want to make a circle that was, let's say, 20 millimeters wide, you would actually use a radius of 10. So that's what we'll do. And the same thing as before, you just type in the numerical number, and then you'll basically get the right size for you. So another tool that we can use is we can go back to the Protractor Tool, and you basically go to the one here that says tape measure and select it. And if we look basically from one endpoint to another endpoint, you can see that it's specifically 20 millimeters. So you can see right there it's 20 millimeters. So that's what I was talking about. So you can use the measurement tool to basically measure the 3D objects that you've created in your environment. So I'm going to get rid of that for right now. And we have a circle right here, so we can actually push and pull that so we can extrude it into a 3D shape. So again, I'll just choose this standard projection view. And the same thing as before, you can push and pull to basically make any size shape that you want, or any in terms of any length. In this case, let's make it 50 to work with. You can see that it's a cylinder. And if I wanted to make a, let's say, like a ring out of this, or basically put a circle within inside of a circle and kind of extrude the material away, what we can do is kind of set it up so that we have to basically set up that same scaffold that we did with the letter A, and basically create a point for us to kind of work off of. So you can do this in the 3D viewpoint, or you can go back to the overhead view. Either one, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like a personal preference, but I'll stay in the 3D view so you can kind of see this a little bit more easily. And basically what you want to do is find the center of the circle. So we can find the center right here, and then you can just draw any arbitrary line to the side, to the endpoint, and it basically creates this line for us, kind of like what we're familiar with. Hit the escape button, and what this does, it just kind of gives us a marking right here, so when we're trying to make another circle, we can kind of have a point to fit into as a reference. So we can go back to the circle tool over here, and then what we can do is we can go back to the 3D object, and you can see it kind of just snapped to that endpoint before. I found when I'm personally using SketchUp to do like modeling, that if you don't do this, sometimes the mouse doesn't really find that endpoint or the center point of the circle if that line isn't there. So by putting this line there, it makes it find it much more easily compared to as if it wasn't there. So you can select it, and just like before, you can kind of make it any size that you want. But in our case, we're going to make the value a value of 5, let's say, and we hit enter, and then you hit escape. So now it makes a circle inside of the other circle, or a cylinder. And then we can delete those lines that we created before. We go back to our push and pull tool, and then we select the inner surface, the one that we just made with a circle, and then we can kind of push it out. So now we can make the value, let's say, we made the cylinder 50 before, so we can type in 50 again, and that will basically remove all the material. So if we go back to the orbit tool, you can see if I move the orbit around here, that it's completely hollowed out, so you can see the kind of like through it completely. Yeah, like that. So basically we made like a tall ring. So let's go back to our standard view. So again, that's one of the benefits of just having this. It kind of just automatically just does it back for us. So we're starting to make some shapes over here, getting a little bit more comfortable with the 3D modeling. So I recommend playing around with this, see what other letters you can kind of work on making, and just getting, again, more comfortable using the program and all the tools, and then we'll get to more intricate designs and everything.